Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us online at Court Community Church. We're excited you're with us. Why don't you join in with some worship?
Oh my.
From the highest of heights to the depths of the sea, creation's revealing your majesty. From the colors of fall to the fragrance of spring, every creature unique in the song that it sings, and all exclaiming, indescribable, uncontainable. You place the stars in the sky and you know them by name. You are amazing, God. All powerful, untamable, awestruck we fall to our knees as we humbly proclaim. You are amazing, God. Who has told every lightning bolt where it should go? Or seen heavenly storehouses laden with snow? Who imagined the sun and gives source to its light, yet conceals it to bring us the coolness of night? None can fathom, indescribable, uncontainable. You place the stars in the sky and you know them by name. You are amazing, God. And all powerful, untamable, awestruck we fall to our knees as we humbly proclaim. You are amazing, God. Indescribable, uncontainable. You place the stars in the sky and you know them by name. You are amazing, God. Incomparable, unchangeable. You see the depths of my heart and you love me the same. You are amazing, God. You see the depths of my heart and you love me the same. You are amazing, God. One more time, you see the depths of my heart and you love me the same. You are amazing, God. You're the God who makes the giants fall. You bring down the walls of Jericho. You're the God who gives the miracle. We believe. You're the God who parts the ocean wide, just to bring us closer to your side. You're the God who brings the dead God, how great you are, and great things you have done. For everything we've seen, there is more to come. Every victory, every battle won. For everything we've seen, there is more to come. We are confident in all your ways, 'cause we know you never make mistakes. God, you fill us with a greater faith. We believe, no, we believe. And God, how great you are, and great things you have done. For everything we've seen, there is more to come. And every victory, and every battle won. For everything we've seen, there is more to come. And all of our hope in, all of our trust in, and all of our future in the God who never fails, and all of our faith in, and all of our strength in, and all of our future in the God who never fails, and all of our hope in, and all of our trust in, and all of our future in the God who never fails, and all of our faith in, and all of our strength in, and all of our future in the God who never fails. God, how great you are, and great things you have done. For everything we've seen, there is more to come. And every victory, and every battle won. For everything we've seen, there is more to come. And God, how great you are, and great things you have done. For everything we've seen, there is more to come. Every victory, and every battle won. For everything we've seen, there is more to come.
Right. Hello, welcome. I'm the pastor at Kawartha Community Church, and we're doing a series called Bounce right now. And Bounce is about us rebounding from a pandemic, rebounding from the things that hold us back, and coming back stronger and better than before. You know, I want to start this message by just telling you I believe in you. I believe each and every one of us can be better for the experiences of our past, but that we can come out of this pandemic and we can come into a brave new world where things maybe have changed a little bit, but maybe there's some things that maybe mean more to us than they did before, whether family, your vocation, your church, your friends, all these kind of things. Maybe things you took for granted before, but now you've learned because you've been parted from them for a while that they really mean a lot more to you than you think, and you realize what it's like if you didn't have them in your life. It's a wonderful moment. And so the first one I want to talk about is change. Because if we figure out change, then kind of the rest of this message is coming up in our series on Bounce, on things like anxiety and dealing with resentful people and things like that. If we embrace change then and have a concept of it and know how to do it, then we're going to have probably a better idea of the next 4 weeks benefiting us. So I'm going to launch with that one, okay? The first, why change? Well, change kind of happens to us anyways, doesn't it? And, here's the thing. If things are going to change, you can do one of two things. You can constantly react to it, or you can embrace it, or become a little more proactive in instituting it in your life. It doesn't mean every change is coming is a good change. No. But things can't be good without change. So you understand the difference? It doesn't mean every change is a good change. There's lots of bad changes that happen. But it doesn't mean, it's impossible to have good in your future unless there's some change involved. And so we're just going to launch into it. Why is change hard? Well, change is hard mostly because we like our creature comforts, we like our comfortableness, and we like things to be predictable. I like to know where I'm going to go to get my hair cut. I like knowing where my favorite restaurants are. I have my favorite places to go. I have my favorite food. I have all those kind of things, right? And after a while, you kind of get comfortable with them. And, it's easier to always go with the predictable than it is to try the new. But, here's the thing. Change is a part of our world. Your favorite restaurant might get shut down. You might get a new job. Your family might move. Your city might go through a recession. You might have a great opportunity, or you might have a great challenge. And all these things are going to be part of life. And so change is hard because we don't feel in control anymore. When you have things that are predictable, you feel like you're in control. But change is hard because we feel like you lose control. And nobody likes to feel like they lose control, do they? But, if you're going on the trip, we can at least try to make it a little more comfortable for you. Change is a part of life. And so if it's going to be a part of life, let's make it a positive part of life. All right? And so let's launch right in. There's what I call change that is how people approach change, which I call the 4 horses of the apocalypse of change. Sorry, I had to put some dramatic on it so you remember it, but these are the 4 ways people deal with change that aren't necessarily healthy. The first ones are what I call the time capsule. I used to work in a factory called BD Waite in Oakville, Ontario, and it was a summer job while I was a student. And I remember there was this lady there, and this was late 80s I was working there, but she was someone who had stepped out of a time capsule from 1972 or 1969, somewhere in that era. And by that what I mean is she wore the tight polyester clothes of the day, the pantsuit. She had the big hippie hair. And as she walked into the room, you could almost hear the wow, 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 wow. It was like she was locked in a time capsule. And that's how some people deal with change. They don't change anything. They find kind of their favorite era, their favorite style of music, their favorite fashion, all those kind of things, and they never change it. And after a while, they really stand out because they're so different. It's not that they're unique. They kind of followed a fad at one time, grabbed onto it, and stayed there. The second one is what I call the resistance. And the resistance are okay, I'm going to change, but I'm going to make it as miserable as possible. And maybe you and I are a little bit like that at times, right? Oh, man, we got a new supervisor. Oh, it's a supply teacher at school. Or, oh, Cousin Vinny's coming to visit, and I'm just going to make this as miserable as possible because I don't like it. It doesn't make me feel good. I feel out of control. And so I'm going to complain about every change. I'm going to sour expression. I'm going to fight tooth and nail and everything like that. A number of years ago, I worked at the community college for Stanford here, and we went through a lot of change in the mid-90s, and I'll never forget, we actually sat down as a whole college. It was a beautiful experience, and went through why we were there as a college and what we wanted to do. We were really restructuring and really came out of it better than we went into it. But I'll never forget, we formulated a purpose statement, and the purpose statement at the college, our vision statement, was that Sir Sandford Fleming College existed for the benefit of the students. And I thought that was pretty obvious, But I could not believe some of my coworkers were so angry that we were picking that as our purpose. And I said, what did you think we were in a community college for? They said, well, the students aren't very nice to me. Some of the students have been rude to me. I don't really even like students that much. And I think, you are in the wrong business, sister. But that's how some of us approach change. The resistance. We just make it miserable. So it's kind of like we're putting out there, we don't like changing, and so don't give us change if you can help it. Third one's what I call the elephant in the room, and that is when you know you need to make a change, you make a whole bunch of little changes, but you don't address the one big change that needs to happen. I've talked, at length before where you'll have a business or a family, or you'll have an organization or a classroom where there's one or two people who are the problem. I'll never forget, I worked in an office one time, and there was a certain employee who consistently made major mistakes that were, really affecting the business and stuff. And it used to drive me crazy, because every time they would make one of these major mistakes, they would put a memo out to all 300 employees about this mistake and how it was avoided, because they were too uncomfortable to sit down with the person and actually deal with the conflict and the change. And often people like that make all kinds of other little changes, peripheral ones, passive-aggressive ones, but they don't actually deal with the real change, the change that needs to happen. And, maybe that's you. Maybe you're carrying around something that has never been dealt with. Maybe you are, you're struggling with something, and you've never really talked to anybody about it. Maybe there's something that, you kind of got into, and now it's got you. Maybe you're not very happy with your life. Maybe you'd like to be a more positive person, or you'd like to move forward in your career. You'd like to go back to school, but all these things you just have never got around to it. And you have one excuse, or you have one thing that is holding back everything out in your life. That's what I call the elephant in the room. And then the last one is what I call faddish change. And faddish change is, everybody's going this way. We're like lemmings. We follow every change around. We're always got to have the latest fashion, the latest coffee, the latest, this, the latest that. To where change isn't for change's sake. Change is just so we don't have people not like us. We just want to be popular. So we say and do what everybody else does. And I poo-poo this idea because, first of all, it's really boring. Secondly, you really look poor, because if you don't stand for anything, you're going to fall for anything. If you don't stand for something, you're going to fall for anything. And that's really true. So let's talk about healthy change. Let's talk about the kind of change that we want to have happen. All right? And remember, our series is called Bounce. All right? So we're going to push down in order to get a good bounce to lift you higher. All right? So here's some things we embrace. Okay. Well, let's ask the question. If I should change, what should I change? If I have to change, what should I change? Change always starts with yourself. It always does. You haven't got a hope of changing anything else in the world if you don't change yourself. Have an honest look at your life. At different times I've had people, and they've had a spouse or a friend or a classmate, and they said, this person's behavior drives me crazy. You got to help me change them. You got to talk to them and change them. And I always ask this question, unless it's something really bad, like the person's an axe murderer or something. And I always say, well, what are you willing to change in order to see that change in them? Well, I don't need to change anything. I'm perfectly okay. It's them that needs it. They're the problem. Well, you are and you aren't, right? If I can't hope to have any change or bring about any change in this world if I'm not willing to be changed myself. If you have a real honest look in the mirror, and I think everybody should, at least every week, and say, what am I doing today that I don't want to be doing tomorrow? And what am I not doing today that I'd really like to start doing? And maybe it's something as simple as flossing, right? There's a survey that says that you will add 5 years to your life if you floss every day. And you'll say, why? Does flossing extend your life? No, flossing doesn't extend your life. But if you take care of your teeth, and you are you're particular enough to take care of your teeth, you soon take care of other things. And so a person that flosses actually cares about other things like diet and sugar count and all those kind of things. And so it adds years to your life, even though that simple habit in itself is not what extends your life. Unless you're going to die of gum disease, I guess. So the first thing you have to start with is yourself. What can I change about me? When am I lending myself to the problem of what bothers me in the world? Am I hanging on to a grudge? Have I got a bad attitude? Do I hate somebody? Do I hate myself? What is it that you can change in yourself? Secondly, don't change the message. There are some things that you should believe in. And for me, as a man of faith, it's my faith in Jesus Christ. That doesn't change. That's non-negotiable for me. Why? Because it is deep and meaningful and has transformed my life and is absolutely precious. For you, some of the things people change when they go through a difficult time are the last things they should change. I'm unhappy inside. I'm going to find another spouse. I'm unhappy inside. I'm going to move. I'm unhappy inside. I'm going to get another job. Sometimes those things can help, but more often than not, the problem follows you into your next reality. The truth of the matter is there should be things that we should consider very carefully before we would ever consider changing. Victor Hugo says, change your opinions, keep your principles. Change your leaves, keep intact your roots. So what else to change? Not the message. Again, we mustn't treat methods as a message and the message as methods. Too often I see people make radical, major changes because they're upset about something, or they want to get some attention, or they want to draw some sort of dramatic episode out to make other people pay. And they change the things they shouldn't change, when in reality, there's lots of little things they could change that would make their lives and their world and everybody around them that much better. Don't change the message. Change the methodology. What else to change? Well, we're going to talk about this in this series. In fact, I'm going to dedicate 2 messages to this one. But this is another thing we should change. Embrace gratitude. Embrace gratitude. You see, when we are grateful, the world looks totally different. Yeah, and I'll give you an example, all right? There's a lot of really unhappy people. I don't know if you've noticed them. I see a lot of them. Maybe they're just on TV or on Twitter, but there seems to be a lot of unhappy people. But someone said something once to me, and I'm going to share it with you too, all right? It's this. 100 years ago, if you lived in today's world, chances are 1 in 5 of your family members would have died of the Spanish flu. Tuberculosis was a major habit. Polio was still around. It was really bad. Many people were malnourished. 100 years ago, only half of children survived to the age of 5. Half did not. 100 years ago, we had just come out of the most horrible war of all time, in which millions and millions of people died, and the borders basically went back to almost exactly what they are at the beginning of the conflict. Some of the greatest countries in the world bankrupt themselves over a stupid war that accomplished nothing, that was built primarily on arrogance. 100 years ago, you were probably earning the equivalent today of about $5 a day. 100 years ago, you were often working in unsafe environments with materials that were harmful to you. 100 years ago, you had no free time, and often you didn't live past your 50s. When the 65-year-old retirement age was implemented, the average lifespan of most people in North America was 62. Look at today. We've got shots to prevent polio. We've got ways, a great healthcare system. We have wonderful jobs. We have access to more entertainment than we ever wanted. Anything we want, we can get, books, clothes, all those kind of things. We live in like a disposable culture now where a lot of the things that you maybe never hoped to have, you actually have many of them in your life. Cars, houses, clothes, coats, boots. In fact, there's a whole market built in our world right now around people who've got too much stuff that need to get rid of it to buy more stuff. And people are selling used stuff to other people that might find value in that, and then they buy too much stuff, and then they got to bring other stuff in. We've got so much to be thankful for. In fact, you took a person 100 years ago when they lived and brought them to the modern world and showed them what our lives were like. They would throw a party every single night. What have you got to be grateful for? You know, it doesn't take a lot of imagination to think of some things. No matter where you're at in life, there's got to be something. In fact, you will find there's probably more. And if you instill gratitude into your life, gratefulness for each day, each cup of coffee, each hug from your child, each chance to go work when so many in the world can't, then you are going to be transformed into a different person. And then what to change? What else should I change? Well, here's another aspect. You need something. In order for you to change, you need to understand that you can't do it alone. You need an objective goal or an objective truth. And by that, what I mean is you need a standard. You need a way to look outside yourself in order to grasp the reality of what you need to change. You know, it may be the example of another person. It may be an idea. It may be a faith. There's a passage of scripture written in the Old Testament, written by the wisest man in the world, Solomon. And it says this: trust the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. We need objective truth. You need something to shoot for that is not something you just concoct in your own idea. Artists will use a vanishing point whenever they're creating a landscape on that. The artist will pick one point on the painting, and then they orient every perspective from the painting onto that one point. You need that kind of objective truth. One of the greatest lies of our world is that you can find all truth inside yourself. That's not true. It's just simply not true. We all need something. So, what to change? Well, one thing you can do to change is to follow the leader. And by that, what I mean is find someone who exemplifies an ideal for you and pattern your life after them. You know, Cal Ripken Jr., probably one of the greatest shortstops of all time, patterned his life after his father. His father was an incredibly determined, tough man. And Cal Ripken ended up breaking the record for most consecutive baseball games played in a row. I think there was like 2,200 of them, without ever taking a day off. And he idealized his father. You know, when I was in my early career, just young 20-something, you know, just starting out my career working in a small accounting office, my boss, Jennifer Moore, was such an example to me. She was classy, she had a win-win attitude, she was knowledgeable, she was smart, she was bright, and she had a great sense of humor. And she really invested in me and grew me as a professional person in an accounting office. She just gave me so much. And I've been so thankful for those different people, those mentors, those people I look at, you know, the people I look up to. They're not famous people often. In fact, famous people often, I find I envy them more than admire them, you know. I wish I could do that, or I wish I could do that, or they got so much money they don't know what to do with themselves. I mean, wouldn't we all like to live like that? But there are people who are good examples. There are people in history who are good examples. Maybe to pattern your life, you know, after a Mother Teresa or a Gandhi. Or to find someone who's in your field who did great things and then pattern your life after them. And then the idea that I believe in faith. I follow Jesus Christ. I follow the example he gave me. That is a great way to change. If we know why we need to change and what we need to change, the question is, how do we change? Well, I'm going to give you some practical stuff here, hopefully to help you out. The first of all is change doesn't come wholesale. Often you got to pick one thing. And in the next 4 weeks, we're going to talk about different things. Maybe one or two of them apply to you and maybe one doesn't. But always start with one thing. You know, maybe you're in horrendous debt. You want to get out of debt. And you know what? Getting out of debt is not easy, but it can be done. And so maybe that one thing is going to be, you know, I owe money to these 5 different agencies. I'm going to take the smallest one. I'm going to raise a bit extra money each month, and I'm going to pay that one off first. And once you get that, you take the resource you put into that and then go to the second biggest loan and do that. All kinds of people have experienced financial freedom by getting out of debt, by making that change. You know, maybe you drink too much. You know, maybe it's a time. There's a guy, I'm trying to remember his name, but he has a great YouTube channel. He's a talk guy. He brings a lot of people on. He's kind of an intellectual guy, but this guy had a really interesting life. He's been a model. He's owned a successful business. He's been on TV. He's been a millionaire. And he said a number of years ago, he realized he wasn't going to accomplish his goals because he drank so much. He just loved to party. And so what he did is he said, in order for me to accomplish what I want to accomplish, I've got to quit getting drunk. And so he cut alcohol completely. He just stopped drinking it. And he said he got so much accomplished because why? Because, you know, the truth of the matter is you drink too much, you feel lousy the next day. Basically, it's a sick day the day after you drink too much. And for that was one change he made. It made a huge difference in his life, and he was able to put his discipline and his focus into so many things. Pick one thing. What is it you want to change? You know, maybe you want to read a book a month. Maybe you want a change of character trait. Maybe you want to be more grateful and less critical. Okay? Pick one thing. And then ask this question. This is very important. A lot of people don't do this. Who am I going to be at the end of this change? If I institute this change, who am I envisioning myself to be? You know, this author and this talk show host, he envisioned himself as someone who is very productive. And so when he put aside drinking, and he says to this day, there's nothing wrong with drinking. He doesn't have a hard time with that. But he said when he set aside drinking, he wanted to be a person that accomplished things, that worked hard and had tremendous focus. And he envisioned himself as being that person, and so he worked toward that. Who will you be at the end of this change? You know, are you going to be a person that works harder? Are you going to be a person that knows your stuff? Are you going to be a person that prepares for things? Are you going to be taken advantage of less? Are you going to have more principles? Are you going to tell the truth? Are you going to get out and exercise? Are you going to lose 25 pounds? Whatever it is, the question is, okay, if I accomplish this, who am I going to be? Because if you're not changing and it doesn't go all the way in, it isn't going to stick. Who do you want to be at the end of this change? And then you have to plan your change. And there are a million different ways of doing this, and I don't want to begrudge it too much because there's lots of plans out there. But you have to have a plan. Your plan, it should be written out, you know, or typed out. You should have it out. It should be understandable. It shouldn't be too complex. But you should be able to make just a quick statement of my plan. I am going to lose 25 pounds in 6 months. I am going to learn to be less critical, and instead I'm going to encourage people. I am going to make a concerted effort for my faith to be part of my life by attending church every week. You know, anything like that. You can choose to pray each day. You can choose to engage in a hobby you haven't had time with. You can spend more time with your kids. You can bring these change, but write it out. Pick dates, objectives, and reviews. You can't just pick the beginning and the end. You got to have a plan to walk through it. Where do you want to be in a month? Where do you want to be in 6 months? Where do you want to be in a year? What does it look like when you do that? And are you going to sit down at those points and say, okay, how have we done? Have we reached our goal that we should at this point? Well, no, we haven't. Okay, what am I going to change to make up the difference to bring this goal about? Who do I have to talk about or talk to? Who do I have to read on? What do I have to do? What do I have to cut out? Who do I need to spend time with? Who do I need to spend less time with? Write it out. Pick your dates, objectives. Third thing, keep focused and determined. You can do this. People have made tremendous change in the past. You can do this. I believe in you. You should believe in yourself. You can change. Great change has come about with many people. You know, one of the lies that goes around the world are what I call determinism. Determinism basically says this: if something was done to you, you're going to do it too. And people particularly use this in cases of abuse. You know, if your parents abused you, you will be an abuser. Now, here's the truth, is many people who are abused, but most do not. Do you know that? In fact, if people all abused who were abused, everybody would be abused. The human race would have been caught up in complete abuse by now. And that's not the case. A majority of people who are abused choose not to abuse. They find a different way. A majority of people that maybe grew up in one circumstance have said, no, I'm not a part of that. And huge changes have been made throughout history by people that said, you know what? Just because it's been done this way doesn't mean we can't do it differently. And it brought great change. Keep focused and committed. Don't wander off and get distracted. Keep focused on that goal. You can get out of debt. You can have a dynamic marriage. You can get your degree. You can improve your work. You can lose that weight. You can get in shape. You can do any of those things. Change has the ability. You have the ability to do it. People have been doing it for thousands of years. And then the last thing, don't forget to reward the victories. Don't forget to reward the victories. There's tremendous victory in accomplishing a goal. Don't forget to pat yourself on the back, say, atta-goal, atta-boy, atta-girl, and, find some friends and celebrate with it. Maybe if you lose that weight, it's going to be buying a piece of clothing that's really fancy, really nice for you. Maybe if it's you get out of debt, you splurge for one steak dinner. Whatever it is, celebrate the victories because, if we embrace change in a positive way, all kinds of positive changes can happen. There's a passage in the Bible written by a man named the Apostle Paul, where he writes about how people get transformed by change through their relationship with God. It reads as this: so from now on we regard no one from a worldly point of view. Though we once regarded Christ in this way, we do so no longer. They're talking about change in perspective. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come, the old is gone, the new is here. They become new people. And you know what? If God believes we can become new people, then maybe we should embrace it ourselves. You can change. And if you're going to embrace the rest of this Bounce series, remember that. Sit down. What should I change? Well, let's start with yourself. What else can I change? Maybe you want to be a more grateful person, whatever it is. Okay. Well, who will I be at the end of this change? Oh, let's write down, okay, what can I do? Let's make some let's try this. This doesn't work, try this. Let's sit down. Let's sit down with someone who's a friend of mine and say, I want to do this and I need you to hold me accountable. Do what you need to do because change is closer than you think. Thank you for being with us. We'll see you next week.
The head that once was crowned with thorns is crowned with glory now. The Savior knelt to wash our feet. Now at his feet we bow. Christ our King. By your Spirit I will rise from the ashes of defeat. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. In your name I come alive to declare your victory. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. By your Spirit I will rise from the ashes of defeat. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. In your name I come alive to declare your victory. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. The silver soldiers washed in rain was boiled for 3 days. His body there would not remain, 'cause our God has robbed the grave. Our God has robbed the grave. Your name is victory. And our praise will rise to Christ our King. Your name is victory. Our praise will rise to Christ our King. By your Spirit. By your Spirit I will rise from the ashes of defeat. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. And in your name I come alive to declare your victory. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. By your Spirit I will rise from the ashes of defeat. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. In your name I come alive to declare your victory. The resurrected King is resurrecting me.
Hey guys,
What are you doing?
just keep a lookout.
Was that supposed to...
I don't know. What is it?
It's back.